Students, whatever homework is given to you, you have to submit it on the very next day between 8 am to 1 pm to the given WhatsApp number, and it is compulsory to submit your homework as your attendance will be marked on the basis of your submission.
Lesson number 20, Active and Passive Voice. What is voice? Voice in a sentence denotes the relation between the doer and the receiver of the action. It is divided into two types, active voice and passive voice. Let's get started. Underline the subject in each sentence. First, my sister taught me how to ride a bicycle. Underline my sister. Next, I was taught by my sister how to ride a bicycle. Underline I. Next, Leonardo da Vinci painted this picture. Underline Leonardo da Vinci. Next, this picture was painted by Leonardo da Vinci. Underline this picture. What is the relationship between the subject and the verb in each sentence? Did you notice that in each set, both the sentences have the same meaning, but their structures are different? In the first and third sentences, the subject is performing the action. In the second and fourth sentences, the subject is receiving the action. Pay attention to these sentences. First, Philip is sitting on a chair in his room. Next, Rumi was talking to her best friend Prachi. In both the sentences, the subjects Philip and Rumi are the doers of the action sitting and talking. So, children, in a sentence, if the subject of the sentence is the doer of the action, it is said to be in the active voice. Examples: Ranveer helped Anwar with his homework. Next, Tushar's uncle took him to dinner on his birthday. Now, pay attention to these sentences. First, the students were scolded by the teacher. Next, the vase in the living room was broken by the child. In both these sentences, the subjects, students, and vase are the receivers of the actions scolded and broken. So, in a sentence, if the subject of these sentences is the recipient of the action, it is said to be in the passive voice. Examples: the rabbit was chased by the leopard. Next, this portrait of my grandfather was painted by a famous artist. Rules of forming sentences in passive voice. First, the subject of a sentence in the active voice becomes its object in the passive voice. The object in the active voice becomes the subject in the passive voice. Example: Sachin scored a century in the match. This is active voice. A century was scored by Sachin in the match. Now this is the passive voice. Rule number second. If the doer of the action is not important, it is usually not mentioned in the sentence in the passive voice. If mentioned, it is introduced by the word by. Examples: water supply was restored after 2 days. So, in this sentence over here, the doer of the action is not mentioned. Next, the tunnel was dug by 3 men. Now, rule number third, the verb in active voice takes its past participle form in the passive voice. Example: the postman delivers our letters. Our letters are delivered by the postman. Rule number 4. When we change a sentence from the active voice to the passive voice, the tense of the verb must remain unchanged. Example: my mother gives us piano lessons every day. So this is the verb is in present tense, active voice. We are given piano lessons by my mother every day. So the tense is not changed, it is present tense and it became into passive voice. Rule number 5. The subject in the active voice must agree with the verb in the active voice. The subject in the passive voice must agree with the verb in the passive voice. Example: the minister is distributing blankets among the poor. Blankets are being distributed among the poor by the minister. Sixth, if a sentence in the active voice has a modal verb, the word be is added to the modal verb in the passive voice. Example: I can complete this work on Friday. This work can be completed by me on Friday. Rule number 7. Depending on the tense of the verb in the active voice, it needs to be changed to its corresponding form in the passive voice. The perfect continuous tense does not have a passive voice. Look at this table. Children, we are not going to study perfect tense. We will only study simple and continuous tense. Rule number 8. When personal pronouns are used as the subject of a sentence in the active voice, they change their form when they become the object in the passive voice. Example: I solved this puzzle. This puzzle was solved by me. Rule number 9. If a verb is followed by a preposition in the active voice, the preposition is retained in the passive voice. Example: the lioness looks after its cubs. The cubs are looked after by the lioness. Remember, children, verbs in the perfect continuous and future continuous tenses cannot be changed to passive voice.